quarry for this stone. So they moved a piece of stone that's probably 1,500 tons from somewhere down 1,000 miles away, shipped it up to this place in the Delta, and then there was a giant statue made from it.
Is it possible?
Mental, but yeah.
Is it possible that the reason why there's so much evidence of the granite statues is because those are the only ones that made it?
I think
they're so high on the Mohs scale that they weren't absolutely disintegrated.
Yeah.
Like a limestone statue would be potentially over thousands of years of erosion.
Yeah, I think so. Well, granite, if you're going to make something that you want to last, you make it out of granite. Or you make it out of this tough stuff like this.
So it's possible they also worked with limestone, they worked with other things. Yeah. Those are just gone.
I think so. Well, and so this is where it comes back to that question about are they Egyptians? And why I don't think you can separate the dynastic Egyptians from.
Whoa, go back one.
That's the Colossi of Memnon.
Fucking hell.
And that's all granite.
That's all granite. Well, actually quartzite.
Has this been placed back together?
It has, yes. The Romans actually rebuilt one of these.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're uncovering big statues here all the time. This is at the, I think it's the Temple of Amenhotep, something like that. It's on the west bank of the Nile, near where this is. And so here's the connection to me. I think, and there's one thing you see, you go into all the temples from the Old Kingdom to the New Kingdom. The consistent look and feel of these kings and pharaohs interacting with the gods, all of the iconography doesn't really change that much. It's the same look. It's that traditional Egyptian look, what you guys said, right? That's, I think they get that. It's like, I get the question like, well, if you think the statues are so old, how come they look like dynastic Egyptians? I'm like, I think it's the other way around.
The dynastic Egyptians copied the old statues.
I think they inherited this iconography, that look. It's like every time you see their rulers, they put themselves in amongst the gods. They're trying to become one of the gods, like take some of that power, that significance. And they put themselves in those shoes, you know. Eventually they got really arrogant and they'd take these big statues, they'd hammer their own name into them. There's tons of examples of where they with these overwritten names and they put this is me now, you know. Like I'm the biggest, that's Ramses the Great. Ramses II did that everywhere. He just graffitied his name deeply into all this stuff, and it's acknowledged that's what he did.
Oh, wow.
But I think that's where they get, that's why you can't disconnect them from that culture. I think they're part of it, but they have a gap, and the gap's probably due to cataclysm.
Right.
Probably knocking them back to the Stone Age and hunter-gatherer. And then when they came back, they had some knowledge and some artifacts and some understanding, but they didn't have the capability.
Right. Now, typically with these types of amazing monuments, there's amazing cities nearby, kind of like what he was talking about. Now, I'm not familiar with Egypt specifically, but are there great cities, the great ancient cities that you can still see? Or like remnants or ruins of those cities? Or are they completely built over?
Thebes, yeah, I mean, Heliopolis, no, there's all still remnants, like up in the north. There's Memphis, there's a lot of like dynastic Egyptian cities that are there. Yeah, it's still all part of it. And I mean, they're generally built over the top of it.
Are the cities as advanced in terms of like infrastructure and city planning as the monuments are in technology?
Oh, you're talking about cities that reflect
dynastic Egyptian cities? I mean,
no, pre-dynastic.
Like, let's say there's only the, Empire State Building left. We can look at it and say, oh, there's an equally interesting city of people that are using those same remnants. So with the fascinating monument, is there
Robbie about rap boys and things, bro.
For example, go back to Tepe.
Thanks, man.
We've accomplished
you
so
saw
much
that
together.
one spot,
I want to thank
and then
all
as you did
my
that kind of LiDAR,
family and my friends and my staff. I only say this, we have worked hard. We've left it all, as the athletes would say, we've left it all in the field. We don't have to...
Yo, X-Paps, what's up,
We don't have to come and say, we'll never say in a month when we're sitting in Florida, we're not going to be looking at each other and saying, you know, if we only worked a little bit harder, you can't work harder. I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better.
Is it like a
subterranean scanning or whatever?
You found that there was a bunch of other versions of those structures that were built.
Right.
Do you see that type of like city planning around the Great Pyramids of Giza? Has that been covered by like Cairo?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we wouldn't be able to tell. It might be underneath.
It's inhabited. Yeah, it's been inhabited. That's the thing. You change it over time, generation. Even more so than potentially these pyramid sites. Where you can see some of that, though, it was really interesting, is Cusco, like in Peru.
In Peru. This is fascinating.
Cusco is like, I think, one of the most unique cities in the world. It's because it's the bottom layer there, it's megalithic. Like it has this, so I think there's a similar story. I think this builder culture was one that was probably global.
These were the Incas?
Well, the Inca is who they attribute it to.
Gotcha. So the Incas are like the dynastic Egyptians.
Yes, but much. I mean, they're much closer to us. Like it's like 1500s, 1600s. Like not that long ago.
Right.
And that empire, as great as it was, the Inca had a fascinating and amazing civilization, but it was really like 150 years. Just go to woe, like when the Spanish came in and they all died.
Yeah.
As a result.
That's going all right. Thank you. Thank you for all that poison. Thank you for the raid, dude.
That's really not what you see.
Also,
the difference between the technological
going all right.
in South America is night
We're doing
and
all
day.
right.
Can you bring up? Do you have some images from?
Yeah, you go to South America, the directory. You'll see it there. But Cusco is the only city in the world, I think, where you can see these different layers of construction.
You can try the droid.
On top of each other.
Just type droid.
Megalithic.
And then your question.
You have Inca. You have colonial Spanish, and you have modern, all stacked up on top of each other.
It's really cool.
Not that. That's Egypt. The next one is.
What is it called? Tehawama or something like that?
Thanks for the raid. My stream's been bugging.
Yeah. I've probably got.
I think my laptop's overheating.
Yeah, this is a good example. Here's like the
this is
Inti
great.
Punku, the sun gates
at the bottom.
Megalithic work, and then you see what the Inca did on top of it. Like that's actually really good Inca work on top.
They continued it in a way that they could.
They were very respectful.
Yeah.
They rebuilt stuff and they repaired it, but the loose stonework, the small stonework, is
going all
totally
right.
what their capabilities are. This is
I was doing some natural stuff, so I'm trying some
unique
force
place as
stuff
well.
now just to
incredible precision in the monuments down here. These are called the H blocks for obvious reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, amazing flatness. Like there's been some work done here to analyze this. Frankly, all of this stuff needs deeper analysis and scanning and
Can
investigation.
You go to those great walls? I think they're in Cusco. These
go
massive...
up. I've definitely got them in there somewhere. Yeah.
No. It's the one with the polygonal.
That's it there, yeah.
What were you playing?
That's the streets
Rocket League again?
This is just in the street.
Yeah. In the city center, that's it's made of granite. Those are granite blocks. And then you can see the...
Look at this.
That's actually Huaman.
What? How did I run out of all the bullets?
Yeah, some of these blocks are like 150, 200
nice.
tons. Very hard form of limestone. And you can, again, you see the delta between the big technology and the little rocks, right?
Yeah.
The Inca came along and did the little rocks.
Now, with these gigantic rocks, the megalithic rocks,
nice.
They seamlessly fit into one another.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love it.
One would look at it and go, okay, there's been some stonework done so that these stones
I've learned so much
perfectly
tonight.
puzzle piece. Is it stonework or is this just 20,000 years of weight? I really don't know.
Dude, this is the one place, Egypt, a lot of the masonry in Egypt, it's kind of easier to look at because it's like flat lines.
Yeah.
It's straight lines. You have the same precision here, but you have these compound curved surfaces, which is ridiculously more difficult.
How did it know the jab
and
was
it's not like it's not like they're just like drawing them up at the front.
That's
it's
really
like if you
crazy.
look behind, if you go on top and you look at the joins, like these joins are perfect all the way through the depth of the stone.
So it's like they're having fun. They
It's
can't
so
make
stupid.
even cuts, but they're like, what would be sexier? Right? It is far easier to just cut these into regular, straight
like
blocks.
artistically done.
I mean, it's difficult still to get them so precisely. You can't stick a razor blade in there. But same thing here, but now you're curving surfaces and these mating surfaces are stupid precise. If ever there was a case for when you get into this like molecular softening tech, like you said earlier, like this thing, just like make this thing like Play-Doh
sassy,
and,
man.
and just shove
The
it in
AI
and
is
have
sassy.
it form its shape next to it, and then it hardens.
Explain
like,
this to us.
It wants to argue.
So we were talking about this when I mentioned this before about the pyramids and like using granite and things like that and moving them from so far. And he had mentioned this on a different show where he was basically saying that it's possible that the molecules can be manipulated to make it not have the same toughness.
Yeah, it's like science fiction, but it's
science fiction, but it would be very similar to the
That's
idea
hilarious.
of like heating up a metal in order to morph it.
Yeah.
Because we do it with certain substances. You heat up gold and then you can bang away at it, or you heat up what is steel to make like a sword. You would do the same.
Malleable.
So if you could make a rock malleable, it would be much easier to do this.
It could be. Yeah, that's.
Thank you for the raid, bro. That's
I
really
look
cool,
at it and
man.
go, I can't imagine a guy. Like, I'm gonna shave a little bit off here, shave a little, like then I'm gonna put this, 15-ton rock back on and check my fit and take it off again and just shave a bit more. Like I don't understand unless you go the other route as like it's fully designed and mechanized and produced with a manufacturing rig similar to the Vase other stuff where you can just I design it, I click go and it just carves it.
Right.
if there may be some other tech involved, and this almost looks like.
It replies
Look at
like
the front of
data
these things too, and there's all
from
these
Star
weird
Trek
scoop marks
Next
and
Generation.
indentations. It's almost like, you know, they were holding, it's almost, you know, you're pushing stuff up, or you can imagine some of these nubs that form. It's like almost like a heat extrusion nub. It's complete speculation. I'd be very clear.
Is there any type of like scientific basis for that type of theory, or is this sort of just like a fun science fiction approach?
There's a theory called geopolymer. It's a little different to what I'm talking
That's what I
about.
thought this was geopolymer.
Yeah,
You know
so
about that?
Yeah, you basically melt. You can go ahead. You melt stuff down and then reshape it.
Yeah.
Similar to kind of what you're saying now.
like you get a bag of this mix and you put some, add water and shape it into thing, right? It's like concrete, but there's challenges and then there's some interesting evidence.
Yo,
for it.
Greg, what's up, man?
I don't think that doesn't work for granite. I
How
don't
are
actually
you?
think that's the case in Egypt.
How are you, my
But
friend?
there is some interesting evidence at Tiwanaku.
Welcome. Hopefully my stream doesn't
potentially
drop. My
for
stream's
some
been
of that
dropping
sort of
every like
technology
40
being
minutes,
used.
so if it
I think
drops, please
it's a
tell me.
legitimate investigation that
Let me
needs to
know.
be looked at.
And
but
then
the
I'll
problem is
restart,
you
but
do
hopefully it
get
won't drop. I gotta get a
a lot of
better
these
fan,
stones
I
have
think, on my
fossils in them and
computer.
all this stuff, and we've got quarries, but it's so, you look at it and you go, how is that not
think
just
it's
like they made
overheating.
it like Play-Doh and shoved a shape into it, you know?
Is there any
Well,
repetition?
that fact, Greg,
in
we
the
got an AI bot
polygonal
in
blocks?
chat now.
No, that's another issue with the geopolymer theory.
Each one
Try
is
it
its
out.
own
Yeah.
fucking shape.
Same as the pyramids too. Same thing. They're not a uniform.
No stone is uniform.
No, that's right. Yeah, because how would you? Yeah, you'd need to make a mold for every stone, which is think about. Well, look at the wall here, right? There's one mold and a billion.
Well, hold on. That means that every stone needs to be adjusted for the last stone that was placed.
Yeah, buddy.
That
You gotta
seems way more
write,
difficult than just
Droid
mapping out the exact size
Or
of the stones.
Android.
Unless you design
There's a
it up
couple
front, you
of
just,
trigger
and it
names
just prints it
named
that way,
after
or
Android
or
18.
cuts it that
And then
way.
this doesn't even account for the shafts and the rooms and
So you can
everything.
write
that-
droid
Oh,
and then
like
write a
Goosebumps.
question.
Yeah.
The shafts in the room
Any
also have to be
question?
cut out
You-
before
you
they're
math.
placed.
That's right, and you have to
Be
place those stones
geometry,
with some pretty
geography,
significant precision for a
history.
4-inch square shaft through the pyramid to run, hundreds of feet like it does. Like
Right,
it,
perfectly square that a robot in the modern day
Kratos'
could go
can
through.
go
First
up,
love?
and it has to line up, right? Because that precision has to be held
Oh, yeah,
from where it starts to where it ends across all those layers of masonry.
Exactly.
Because you're going into diagonals, like it's horizontal courses.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like
I tried to
X and Y
change the
axes
name
of squares getting
Yeah,
broken.
of the
yeah.
bot,
And
but I
with
wasn't
each
successful,
block,
so we still got
There's a
stream
new
elements.
calculation made for the next block.
Wah,
And
wah.
you fuck up one,
It's gone, right?
I'm
I
hopeful
guess
that we
maybe
can
they
figure
can
it out
chisel
though,
away
and
as
then
they're
we'll
placing
put
it. I guess,
kind of
or
what
not,
I'm
they're not
thinking.
chiseling, but like I guess whatever the machinery
User
was at the
name
time.
or-
the machinery is advanced enough, but still, if you have a different
So, like,
size,
let's try-
how could you have machinery advanced enough to create this, but not advanced enough to just make them uniform? Because if it was uniform, we'd go, okay, forget it. There's
Right.
no way they did this with the stone and the chisel.
Right.
The fact that it's not uniform is what leaves a little bit of wiggle room
Right.
for a not super advanced society to create it, just with tons of work
And time, yeah.
and fucking time.
Yeah, but I think the more you dive into like what it would actually take, it kind of gets a bit silly with some of the time stuff. I think just with the primitive
That's a
methodologies,
cop-out
it's like,
answer.
yeah, something else was going on. Like that's the thing, and we
I think you gotta be
haven't
more
done
specific.
A lot of experiment, like we've never done. Every time
That is
we've
definitely a
tried,
What would we
cop-out
need to
answer.
find, Ben? What is
I-
the
I-
what is it called? The smoking gun? What is
yeah,
the
smoking gun. Well, we need to either find some tools or some records or some
I
documents.
think in a
that
movie
talk
there?
about that may close it. But who knows if that stuff might have been found. And
We
it's
have
been
evidence?
taken,
I know you were
it gets washed
telling
away.
me
I've heard
you were
rumors of
in
that
a-
sort of thing.
We have
Hope
evidence
your dad's
of
doing
the
all right, man.
results of advanced
I
technology.
guess we're talking
We-
about
We
that.
just don't have the advanced technology.
Yeah.
That's right. The evidence for the tools is in the objects themselves.
Bro, the scoop thing and the
Yeah.
core.
Yeah, the tube drills and the yes. So you know what? The whole where are the tools argument. By the way, not for nothing. That applies
Yeah, I remember you said you wanted to move
equally
back up
well
north
to the
or even
mainstream
to Ohio.
explanation
Even.
for these saw cuts and these tubular drills. Okay.
You got to explain the tube drill
Okay.
thing, Talk. This is, you're not supposed
Sorry,
to
not
look
to
at
dox you, bro.
blocks from 4,500 years ago and find perfect cylindrical carve-outs.
Grooves.
Grooves.
Yeah, I found them at the Met. There's a couple pieces at the Met yesterday. Well, yeah, there's a block in there with 2 tube drills. It's pretty cool. I was like, oh yeah, these are classic tube drills.
Is that in tools here?
It's in tooling. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's some categories of stonework again coming from the oldest parts of ancient Egypt, like dynastic, like Old Kingdom, and these things there. So this is a core from a tube drill, and if you go to the next picture, you'll see the hole that they leave. This has been split.
Huh.
Right. So what happens is you have a tube drill tube drill, whatever.
Yeah.
And it cuts down, it creates this core, and then you snap the core off and you're left with this hole in the granite.
There's probably
Now,
more going on in Indianapolis, to be honest.
You get a chisel in there, you wedge it.
Sounds
I don't know,
like a
you wedge
more
something in there.
bigger economy.
Yeah, you snap it off. You can see where it snapped off, just the bottom. And so you see these in these old kingdom sites, and again, into extremely hard stone, basalt, granite, diorite, blah, blah, blah. And they get quite large, right? That's one that's about 9 inches, 8-9 inches in width.
Oh, wow.
And again, the block's been quarried. So this would just be a hole on its own until somebody came along and quarried
Yeah, I
the
think
block.
Indianapolis
I think they
would
looked
be
for them for quarrying because
least a
it's like a
bigger
hole,
city.
so they try and split the stone on the axis
Depends what
of
you're
the
going
drill
for, I
hole.
guess.
Would have quarried.
Oh, anyone later
Upstate
on.
New
At
York
some
has
point,
kind
it
of
was
gotten a
Ramses
little,
II in
not
the New Kingdom
sketchy,
was
but
quarrying stuff from the
a
old
lot
pyramids.
of the
At that point, for thousands of years after that.
But to do it
industry
like
from
that,
like
you would need some kind of tool, right?
No, what, to quarry the block?
the end of
Yeah,
the
it's like a
19th century, of the 20th century.
Yeah, you need a tube drill to make this hole.
Factories
You see
of
how the
clothes
stone's
and
been
shit.
split down the axis of the hole, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very common quarrying technique that's still in use today. Essentially, you carve.
I mean, Rochester does have
like
university
divots
there, I
into
think.
the rock, then you stick wood
So
in
does
them.
Indianapolis.
You're trying to split the stone because you want to take the finished surface.
Right.
That happens everywhere. You see that all over.
And
the
don't
place.
some stones have just a natural property where they do split pretty cleanly?
That's what they're trying to take advantage of. A lot of times it fails, sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, so you see these tube drills. Thank you. They have these cores, and we found a couple of these cores. Now, a guy named Flinders Petrie in the 1800s took one of these cores and analysed it and looked at the grooves, and he's like, you know what? This is a spiral groove around this core. It's not like just imagine how we do it today. You get this high-speed drilling.
I don't know why I found that funny.
It takes forever to cut through granite.
Yeah.
Or like a
It's
tile
funny.
saw or whatever. It's not going to leave a spiral groove. It's going to be you'll have these
jagged.
circular things.
I'm more
There's gonna be
interested
a lot of
in
circular lines as you
how
very
it
slowly
responds and
grind
the
down
actual
through the material.
response it gives.
This thing actually penetrates the stone at like a 1 in 60 rate, which means that for every, so if you take that spiral, that circular motion, you stretch it out straight. So for every 60 inches of horizontal travel, it's going an inch in vertical travel.
Yeah, think of like
Which
a
is-
screw.
It's like a screw rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's screwing into the granite. And we're seeing the
So a
result.
hollow screw, essentially.
Yeah, it's like
and that's where the core would exist.
And so Petrie looks at this, is like, what the fuck is this?
It's a
Like,
lot of pressure.
Petrie was the first guy to apply like engineering principles from the industrial age to this stuff. It's a mind trip to me to think that it took us until the industrial age to even be able to put some of this stuff into a context that we can understand it.
Yeah, isn't that
Because
interesting?
we were only then starting to develop machining
Because you don't even
capabilities.
have the machinery you can explain
If
it.
you found this in the 1700s, you're like, no one's ever done this before, ever.
You don't know what it is. You
don't even know
you
what
don't
you're
have the
looking at.
framework.
Why?
Yeah, it's like taking a cell phone back to cavemen. I mean, it's just trying to. We know.
It's just a rock to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
know
this
what
is-
wireless networking and all that shit is like satellites. That context you're missing, but we have the context for it now, and we couldn't do this today. Like, so Petrie said, well, shit, maybe they had 2 to 3 tons of pressure on the tube drill, and then Chris Dunn, the same guy I mentioned earlier, has analysed this core because it's in the Petrie Museum in London, and they let people play with their toys, which is really nice of them. So he's analysed this, and he's kind of furthered the work of Petrie to define this spiral groove that's on this thing. What's crazy about it is, and again, this may not have been a high-speed drill, right? Might have been slowly turning, but think that penetration rate, that's 500 times greater than we can achieve with our drills today, right? Our drills, these high-speed things,
Yeah,
I mean, it might go faster, but in terms of that penetration rate into the granite, this rate is like 500 times greater than.
Whereas our modern machines, I guess, are going off like torque and friction, whereas this is going off just pure weight.
Oh,
where it's able
we
to
don't
push
know.
right in.
Yeah, it could be ultrasonic. It could have some other mechanism of punching into the granite. And you see these things all over the place, and ranging from about this big, little tiny things, to about 9 inches big. And there's those, and then there's circular saw cuts that seem to work in the same way, where they're just eating away into this stone that we can't figure out.
What about the scoops?
Yeah, scoop marks in the quarry, same thing. So there's all these categories of
Keep
tooling
going.
and
Keep going. Keep
and
going.
evidence. I'm sure there are some pictures of the quarry in here as
do
well.
some like really crazy, like
So,
I don't know.
this long story to get back around to where are the tools. So the mainstream's explanation for these tubular drills and for these, saws and stuff. Yeah, this is the scoop
That's
marks.
fucking crazy.
They say, well, it was a copper bar or a copper tube, and they rubbed it with sand, and like a bow drill, or they dragged
You
it
can
back
ask
and
it
forth and
anything,
ground away
literally
with sand.
anything.
Now, it obviously doesn't match the tool marks or anything remotely close to what we see, but guess how many.
You know what's really interesting?
cockatoos or
The,
copper
like the
bars they
scientific
found?
names of plants.
So where are the tools for your exploration?
Right.
You say, where are my tools? Where are your tools?
I mean, it looks like a mini excavator.
yeah, this is, and that's straight into granite. Like that's at the quarry.
That's granite. That's what I was wondering. What stone is that? That's fucking nuts.
That's at the quarry in Aswan, where they have the 1,200 ton obelisk that's still attached to the bedrock.
We gotta get that one. I think what's so interesting about this is like, this feels like a conspiracy that will be proven in our lifetime.
Like,
that
dude,
will really shake our understanding of
acacia,
history. And it's really cool to learn about it. It seems like
Nilotica?
there's tons of evidence
Wow.
that would at least show that there was.
I know
more
the
advanced
acacia's
technology. Maybe
in the
bare minimum, we understand
Leguminosae
there was more
family.
advanced technology. Maybe bare minimum that.
Yeah.
And then we lost it, and then we developed our own. But there was
Has,
something
like,
else going on.
bean
That
seeds,
bare minimum,
bean-like
everybody can get on board,
seeds.
right? Because we can acknowledge that you can't do
Legumidae.
these things with a stone and a chisel.
It also theoretically turns
Super
government
family.
into doomsday preppers, which is kind of funny, and also probably necessary.
Wait, what do you mean by that one?
Because if you're like, yo, these guys got wiped out by a
Oh,
comet or
mushrooms?
whatever,
Yeah,
and there was
yeah.
no evidence of them
Psychedelic
left
mushrooms?
whatsoever,
Yeah.
we should prepare for such a scenario
Sure.
to happen in our lifetimes.
That is what it's. I think that's ultimately what's important about some of this work. Really, is there's a fundamental. So we grow. You know, what's the fundamental understanding we have of our civilization, our place in history? We all think that we went from cavemen to striped toothpaste and space shuttles in this 6,000 year period. Like,
Yeah.
which is what? It's how many? So 60 centuries. 25 years a generation, like 240 generations essentially from stone man to
Wow.
today.
Yep.
And it's
Bro.
like, so it's as if we have this
Bro.
idea, right? Well, this is what civilization is. This is a preordained path. This is how you do it. We don't need to worry about it. But I think if you had the same fundamental understanding, in the same way we understand that oh no, there's a cyclical thing going on here. We're just the latest revolution of the civilization wheel. There's a relationship to cataclysm. We've risen to great heights and we've knocked down in the past. I do think on the long term, that could change priorities, man. We might actually start trying to solve and putting a bit more resources behind trying to solve some of the bigger issues. The analogy that I've figured out that I want to use talking about that is honestly is climate change. Like whether you agree with it or not, or whatever it means to you, that's a movement that's changed people's behavior. It's in a generation or two. It's a fundamental thing that's entered our understanding of what it means to be a human. It affects our behavior, how we interact with others and the world around us. And it's changed us. And I think that's the type of understanding that if it gets into our culture and into our what it means to be a modern human, then it might actually, we might stand a chance of changing our priorities, worrying a little less about fighting with each other in the next election cycle, and then
humans are so
looking at the bigger picture.
Humans are so illogical. I don't know if it works, but if you're thinking we have an existential crisis at any given point, you probably don't care as much about critical race theory or whatever little government info, like these little things that we worry about. That's what I was kind of joking about. Like,
Oh,
who
it's
cares how
really
many
good. It's
genders
really
there
nice.
are?
Yeah.
If the human species, if all of Earth is at stake at some point, we don't know when.
Yeah.
We should prepare for that instead of worrying
Yeah.
about this shit.
Yep. Or you
It makes sense.
Well, you go with the expanse, and it's like maybe the universe is better off without us because we're just warlike talking monkeys that are probably no good for anybody. Who knows?
Yeah.
You can take two approaches to it,
Yeah.
but I think that because the long-term solution is to get off the planet, spread out,
I
right?
asked you about this before,
Wow,
but do you
so
think
shit.
drugs or any type of mind-altering substances contributed to the creation of any of these?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced of it actually. There's lots of use for particularly DMT in the ancient world. I mean, the blue lotus flower is one that's represented in all the artwork.
Oh wow,
I mean, you
insane.
literally see images.
question,
of
good
this,
question.
like a
I
smoking
like these
pipe
questions.
almost. It's like, and you're getting showered with knowledge, power, and stability, or life, power, and stability from the gods. And some of
Good
those
question.
things, it looks to me like smoking pipes. The blue lotus flower is full of DMT. The acacia trees, that's got DMT in it. You see, I think there's some of those visions in those altered states, some of that geometry and things are represented in some of the artwork. There's been mummies found with cocaine from South America, like in the linen.
From South
South America, go figure.
Yeah,
Even
there's
then.
some trade, right? They're probably trading.
They're trading
stuff.
cocaine from South America?
Potentially, there's definitely been mummies found with.
Wait.
coca.
Mummies in Egypt?
Yes.
Found with South American coke?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Don't explain it.
But does no one
That's-
else want to
they-
explain this? Why are you
You
the
can
only
do
one
some
that's like
crazy
talking
shit,
about the
like-
mummies doing blood?
like,
That's
you can do
crazy.
some really crazy shit. Like,
Boomerangs in ancient Egypt, the name for them literally translates to foreigner's weapon. Like, they're in the museum. You can
That's
go find
not as
boomerangs.
cool as coke being
in the,
exported.
This is true.
Yeah, but he's
When did they find the
Australian,
coke?
you know.
I'm not sure on the details. You'd have to look at, if you look up mummy cocaine, you probably find the details. But
yeah, let's look that up, please. Can I ask you, while he looks that up, what are your thoughts on climate change? Because this could theoretically, a lot of what we believe is climate change could just be, you know, Younger Dryas type things.
I think that if you want to understand climate change, you probably need to widen your scope of view a little bit and look back a little bit further than the last century or two, is what I would say, because in a lot of ways, to me, the modern climate change discussion is, and to borrow an analogy from my friend George Howard, it's like we're sitting in a car arguing about the radio station and what channel we're listening to, but we're ignoring the fact that the car's sitting on a railway track and the train's coming. We've got bigger problems. I think, and if we burn...
Wait, what do you know? You know some shit.
Billions, wow,
Is there a comet coming?
No, I don't know. I don't know. On a long enough timescale, 100%.
Oh my God!
I think
Come
we
on.
are in this cosmic shooting gallery.
Yeah,
It's only a
that's
matter
Come
of
on.
time.
Yeah.
And it's, look,
Come
if we
on.
burn
That's
every
right.
last ounce
That's
of fossil
correct.
fuel,
That is actually
and the end result
specific.
of
That's like
that was that we
exactly
averted
right.
the next cosmic impact, then
And it's
carbon
not
debt
like it's not even a
paid.
math question.
Yeah.
That's like
there's
a
nothing like
regulation
the
question.
climate change that is
That's
a
so
result and the
fucking crazy, man.
of a comet of a
You
of
can
a
do your
of a
job with
cosmic impact like that.
ChatGPT.
Like,
Yeah.
you want nuclear winter? Like, that's what it is. Like, it blocks out the sun for hundreds of years. Everything on Earth dies. You know, you can't breathe outside. Like, the half of the world is on fire, kind of thing. Like, it's apocalyptic, and the words, that's what it means.
And
like,
that's not speculative. Like,
No,
I
it's
remember,
happened.
yeah, you were telling me that, like, there's
Yeah, I
a
give you a
piece
number.
of the bedrock that you could see that was on fire, or the remnants of the fire, and this
Yeah,
exists
it's-
throughout the earth.
There's like a black mat layer at that Younger Dryas boundary layer in the soil, in the strata. There is an organic, it's like a soot layer almost, where it's, and the calculations
That's
are
so
something like
crazy.
9% of the organic matter on the planet was on fire, which is
At one time.
At one time, it's an astronomical
It's
amount
just
of
an ash layer in the bedrock.
It's literally, yes, it's fallout from the fires. Yeah.
Insane.
It was either flood or fire. Like, you look at every ancient culture, it's flood or fire. Like, it's
Yeah.
either cataclysmic fire or it's world-ending floods. Like,
Kind of makes you feel lucky, huh?
yeah, well, that's the thing. You know, people complain about it, but honestly, our climate has been the most stable. We've had the best climate in the last sort of 10,000 years that we've had for almost 200,000 years, like,
Yeah.
on the planet. So when you talk about modern climate
Shouts
change
to
and
Younger
we're
Dryas.
arguing about
Yeah.
CO2
Yeah.
and like 1/10 of a degree, I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fine. Look, that's not to say pollution, bad. Treat the planet good, yes. Like, let's clean up our act, do all that stuff. But
We have bigger
the
problems.
reality is also CO2 is not a problem. More CO2 is good. The planet nearly went into plant death in the Little Ice Age. The warmth is great. We've been far warmer and had far more CO2 in our history on this planet and supported megafauna and megaflora, the likes of which don't exist at all anymore.
It's when it gets cold. It's a
Cold is the problem. Small cold periods associated. Guess when the Black Plague was? It was
Oh,
a
man.
cold period. All of the downturns.
Oh, because
through
the
our
heat is
history.
going to burn off a lot of the bacteria.
What? Cold periods are associated with famine and less plant growth, which means
Yeah, bacteria-
your immune systems are weaker. You don't eat as much, all the stuff
Bacteria
happens.
can't grow in cold, and then we're very much like bacteria in that way.
Yeah, pretty
Like,
much.
we're the ones that...
I was thinking it was going to get burned off in the heat, but you're right. That makes sense. And also just the weakness of the body. If there's no, like...
Famine, yeah. you
Winters
get-
are just rough in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cold's bad, and cold is worse than getting warmer. Like, this whole planet's on fire is nonsense. Like, it's fine. In fact, the planet is greening. Like, you've seen the evidence for this. Like, the planet's actually greening due to the slight increase in CO2. CO2 is not a pollutant. We shouldn't be demonizing CO2. It's fine. Like I said, in the past, we've had many times the number of CO2 that we have today. It's not a big deal. We've never had a runaway climate. The climate on this planet's very stable. Even when things like cosmic impacts happen, it recovers. Like, it's a very stable system.
And just to clarify, so you don't get yelled at, that's not to say there's no problem with pollution.
Oh, yeah.
There are other problems, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily what we think it is.
I hate having to preface that all the time by saying, well, if you somehow question any of the narrative, it's like, you're pro-pollution. Like, of course, pollution's bad. Let's clean up our act. Let's keep the oceans clean.
Two things
Let's
can
do
be
all these
true.
things.
Yeah.
Let's behave like responsible stewards of the planet,
But if polluting was making it colder,
let's not tax everyone.
That's a bigger problem.
that's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it'd be a bigger problem too. And
Yeah.
it would be. Cold is bad. Cold is bad.
What'd you find here,
So
Mark?
this is a German toxicologist basically did a study on the hair of a priestess that they uncovered.
Coca.
And they basically found traces of nicotine and cocaine, which had been considered to be cocoa and tobacco plants native to the Americas that were not thought of to have been brought to Africa until after Columbus's voyage.
Well, I do think the dynasty, we don't give the dynastic Egyptians enough credit for what they did. I think they were probably much wider ranging. I mean, they had bigger boats than the Vikings. We know the Vikings got around a lot of places.
Do we know that they, I thought we haven't found any boats from the Egyptians.
We found plenty of boats. They're mostly river boats, though. They wouldn't last a sea voyage. That said, you can go to places like Hatshepsut's temple, and there's literally scenes on the wall of ocean voyages where there's fleets of ships. They're even drawn underneath. There's like ocean creatures that you don't get in the Nile. Like, they talk about an expedition to what they called Buntland, to go and get stuff at one point. There's a place in Australia called the Gosford Glyphs that I happen to think is probably a result of a shipwrecked, like Ptolemaic period Egyptian crew. There's these glyphs in this place in Australia, in this little cat. They think it's a hoax. It's not a hoax.
Wait, go to this.
Gosford Glyphs, yeah.
Gosford Glyphs.
Yeah, Gosford Glyphs.
And you're saying that the Egyptians reached Australia.
Yeah. Well, it's on their maps too. They literally show like horses in America, and they show.
This is dynastic Egyptians.
Yeah. Ptolemaic period, like late period Greek Roman period. That's the matches the glyphs that they did. They look poor because the story that it tells, we had some of it translated, was the scribe and the captain died. I think one of them died of a snake bite. They were shipwrecked. So this is the results. The carving are the results of a guy that could probably read Egyptian but wasn't a stone carver. It's like you can probably read and write on paper, but try carving it into sandstone, see how far you get. But anyway, so they've known about this, literally the thumbnail for my video about it. They've known about this since the 1970s. The modern dogma on it, I guess, is say, well, it's a hoax. Some guy came back from the war and was like, oh, I was in Egypt, so I'm just going to draw some random collection of hieroglyphs on the wall. Turns out that's not the case. It actually tells a story. It's coherent. What's even crazier is there are symbols on this wall that we didn't decipher until like the year 2000. So they weren't in Egyptian dictionaries until the year 2000. Yet they're still on this wall and been there since the 1970s, and they still want to call it a fake. I'm like, what's so hard to believe? These guys were seafarers. Maybe they just got a whole bunch of storms blew them halfway across the Pacific, and they got shipwrecked down here. They got looked after by the local Aboriginals. They lived their life. They buried their dead, and they wrote something about it on this wall.
Do we know what the story says?
Yeah, it says that it was the part of it, not all of it's been decoded, but the part of it, it says that, yeah, it was exactly that. It was a crew that got shipwrecked here. One of them died from a snake bite. The captain and the scribe died, and then the locals were looking after them. Like the Aboriginals would look after people. Like it happened a lot with the white explorers too.
I mean,
later
if you
on.
could make a pyramid, you can make a boat. You know what I mean? Like once you subscribe to this idea, what's that?
Sorry, this would be dynastic Egyptians, and we're not sure dynastic Egyptians built the pyramids.
Right. They did a lot of dynastic Egypts did a lot of amazing stuff. They were, particularly by the New Kingdom and the Ptolemaic period, they had a lot of capability. They were tremendously wealthy. They built like Karnak Temple. Sure, it's sandstone, but it's spectacular. Like, they built some amazing stuff.
Karnak Temple?
Karnak. You know, they embarked on they were a massive civilization that lasted a long time. I don't want to undersell what they were capable of.
Yeah, we're just comparing them to the goat.
Well, yeah, there's as capable as they were and as magnificent as they were, there's just a few things that are outside of their technological capability. And that one top left there is that red one, top left there.
This one?
Yeah, that's one of them, yeah. So this is like these giant sandstone columns.
That's beautiful.
And that's all dynastic work. All those rams, there's dynastic work. These big pylons and walls are dynastic. There's huge structures. Like the Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple, they're amazing. I think they combine, like a lot of these structures combine both elements. It's like they built a temple on top of an older temple or an older structure. That
maybe
I think does stretch back to, you know, these earlier times of these granite artifacts, the big obelisks and the single-piece statues made from granite that show all these signs of precision. Like
we've been streaming for a long time, but our streams been cutting out.
As being this is definitely older, and you know, to me, it has to. It's a couple things. It has to show the machining marks, right, from these advanced tools that we know weren't around or we can't explain. They have to show precision, symmetry, like anything, and we have to analyze it to look at that. You can't just look at it and go, I think that shows all this precision. Like we need to do more work analyzing these things to define that. And there's a bunch of objects we've done some of that for. And then I also think that anything over, say, 300 to 400 tons. I think once you get into those realms, I don't think you're moving those as a Bronze Age civilization. No, certainly no one's demonstrated.
Why is that? Why is that weight?
Well, because and it fluctuates somewhere in there, I think, because it's not like as mass goes up, it's not like a linear difficulty scale that goes up with it, right? When you get into really large weights, material strength becomes an issue. You can't be using wood.
900
it's like
pounds,
the difficulty
4
level ramps
feet.
up.
Come on.
Yeah.
And so particularly once you get to like 1,000 tons and more, but there's plenty of stuff that I'd say I think your upper limit's probably 300 to 350 tons. People have demonstrated, hey, we can move at 50 tons or 100 tons.
Right.
I think they could totally do it, but when you start scaling up to these big numbers, the obelisks and stuff, and particularly in the environments they are, like that obelisk in the quarry, man.
It's just
1,200
insane.
tons.
What's that called?
It's Aswan Quarry, ASWAN. I have a picture of it in my directory, but you can look it up. Aswan Quarry, an obelisk. And it's 1,200 tons. It's made from granite. It's in a granite quarry. It's literally in a granite mountain on an angle that there's no room to move this thing, but somehow they carved it out and you know what, we're going to pick this thing up, lift it up 30 feet, and then move it across this rocky, mountainous environment and somehow transport it somewhere.
So this was an obelisk that was never completed.
It was never completed, right? It's
And how do we know it was an obelisk and not just some other type of?
It's shaped like an obelisk. It
There's
literally has a
pointed
pointy
top?
end. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's roughed out. Like they would often do this. They would almost like leave a sacrificial layer of stone around the outside of stuff for shipping, and then they would finish stuff on the sides.
Interesting. Then they finish it. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
they never detached it from the bedrock. I mean, so it's still attached to the bedrock. There's stones of this size in Baalbek and Lebanon.
And this is similar to the present obelisks that we see that are still erected.
This is way bigger.
Oh, this is way bigger.
Yeah, some of the other, I think the biggest other obelisk might be 400, 500 tons, something like that.
But those are still solid
Still
pieces of.
single piece of granite standing.
Oh wow.
That we know. Well, and there's rumors in history of an Old Kingdom obelisk at a site called Abu Ghurab. We know, and actually that it is acknowledged it's not a pyramid. It looks like a pyramid. It's actually the base for what would have been a massive obelisk. But it's all gone. They just think it's been quarried. And
Of course.
up, so.
Now the hieroglyphs that we all know now from Egypt, like the guy
Oh,
standing.
come on,
Are any
whatever.
of those? Do they tell a story?
Yeah,
of
what does
how
that mean?
These pyramids could have been made.
Like, what is that?
I don't know.
Did they tell a story of how the pyramids could be made? Were they made by the dynastic Egyptians?
There's very little actually about the pyramids. That's the funny thing. There's no depictions or scenes that really show them ever building those pyramids. There are depictions in the tombs of the nobles of them showing them making mud bricks. Because after those stone pyramids, you got to remember, like that's one of the crazy things about those stone pyramids, is that they're the first pyramids ever made. Like it went step pyramid straight to like, what was it, Maidum, and then the bent pyramid, red pyramid, great pyramid, second pyramid, third pyramid. Like they're the first pyramids. These are the most precise and giant structures. After that, they kept making pyramids
They
according
just
to
got
the official.
shittier and shittier.
It just, well, they're all made from mud brick, like
And to your
little mud
point-
bricks, and they're all eroding. But
Yeah.
they do talk about building those. They don't really talk about building any of the pyramids. And in fact, there's a little tomb around at Gyges. There's an we like to take people there and show them the inscription. It says, "This guy was the overseer
I wonder how fast that was.
of the pyramid city." He didn't say it's very careful grammar. It says he wasn't the
So
overseer
slow,
of
the
like, the pyramid
force
builders. It was the
starts.
pyramid city. It was the city that sprung up
Fucking
around
so
the pyramids.
As if the
3
city was there, the
seconds
pyramids were
slow.
already there.
It's as if
Too
the pyramids
slow.
were already there.
He
It
was the
actually-
overseer of the land. And that would also support your theory if there's there's hieroglyphics, but none of them building the most impressive thing theoretically they've ever built.
Yeah.
They have hieroglyphics then building a less impressive one though.
That's right. So, and that's typically what gets you. So you see the same thing. For example, there's a depiction of them moving a statue, a big statue. It showed up briefly earlier, and it's like, well, see, this is how they move the big statues. It's like, wait on. This depiction is of a statue that we know part of it still exists. It weighed about 56
Oh, that's a
tons.
bad
There's
animation.
180 guys here, and that statue's made of calcite. It's not made of granite.
Was
You
it?
can't use that to explain how they might have moved a 1,000-ton
I think it
object.
was.
You know, you can move a 56-ton object with a bunch of guys dragging it on a sled. Good luck trying to do that with 1,000 tons.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's.
Couldn't they have just gotten more guys? Is that possible? If they got a city of men?
No. I don't think, not with 1,000 tons. The frictional coefficient
What?
you have to overcome.
It's like
Yeah.
You just
it's-
dig it into the ground. Your wooden sled that you're sitting on, this thing's going to explode. They didn't have access to the wheel, according to them. Like there's no depictions of them using the wheel back then. So it's like, and then you've got to get it across places like this, where it's like literally mountains. There's a lot of this stuff, and I think they use the Nile, because Aswan's on the Nile, but there's tons of granite artifacts that aren't like rose granite from Aswan. They're like a black granite or a diorite, and there's these other quarries that are way out in the eastern desert. Like nowhere near the river. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of miles across mountains and valleys, and like it's a whole other logistical
It's also
issue.
possible that there were like other river systems that existed back then.
Maybe. There's not a lot of evidence for it in terms of you sort of see something there, but yeah, the Nile's been there for a while.
Yeah, I saw one video, it was a random video on YouTube about them floating the blocks up the Nile, not on boats itself.
Ladders and things.
Yeah. So, I mean, even that is just really tricky, but that makes more sense than loading it onto some like rickety little ship and having that hopefully not capsize. Yeah.
It's an exercise I want to do. Particularly at the quarry, they do say, well, see this area here, this is the harbor where they loaded these ships. I'm like, we have examples.
No, like just stop.
So it's a giant 1,500 ton stone they moved in like the 1800s from Finland to Russia. Part of that was across water, and they had to make a huge barge to put this thing on, massive. And then they had to tie up warships on either side of it to keep it balanced. This massive thing. And you're talking about this harbor that's like 2 times the width of that obelisk. And you say you're going to put a ship in there? Can you even get a ship that's going to displace enough water to take 1,200 tons and have its center of gravity in the right place, where it doesn't just go, which is probably what would happen if you tried. I just don't think you could fit any ship in there that would be even close to big enough.
Sorry, can we take like 2 minutes so I could pee?
Listen, let's just discredit everything that you just said.
All right.
Do you believe in giants?
I think there's a lot of evidence for it, yes. I've had a discussion with Hugh Newman, who's big into it, and I'm like, man, show me one bone. I mean, show me one bone, you know.
Didn't they find some in America? Wouldn't they find these, like...
Lots of reports of that, but there's no bone. Like, I honestly... There's nothing that you can go see. Now, there's some legitimate stuff involved with the giant. I've since learned, since I said that to him, and he's like, oh, actually... But so the Smithsonian has admitted to... There is some documents where they talk about having them. They say they don't have them anymore. I don't... what happened was it's this, divine... precedence of the human species. So we had this attitude in Victorian eras where we were the superior version of humans. Like, there's no one above us. So when we found evidence for bigger, stronger humans, there was some motives to try and cover that shit up. So I think that might be at the origin of some of these stories. Now, that attitude doesn't really exist anymore. So I'm like, who cares if we find giant bones? Like, we'd add it in. We have Gigantopithecus. Like, we've just added to our fossil species, in my opinion.
Sorry, how big are we talking?
Well,
what's Gigantopithecus?
Just like one of the previous hominids is like a Homo Gigantopithecus. It's like one of our cousins in the Homo series, like Homo species. Yeah, like a Neanderthal. But there's Gigantopithecus, and he was 10 feet to like giant, massive walking monkeys like these things.
Oh, just a monkey that walked on.
Yeah, Gigantopithecus is blackie. He's like 3 meters tall. Yeah, like an ancestor. We'd probably add in a giant to like our species somehow. I don't think it'd be a huge deal, but there seems to be plenty of evidence for it. Put it that way.
What did you just say, Akash? What were you just asking?
How big are they?
Yeah.
I mean, 9, 10 feet or 3 meters, something like that is I think the realms of possibility. Some people go a lot further than that with some of the giant talk.
Now, are the giants the same as those like weird kind of like conic-shaped skulls you find on some of the
elongated skulls?
Oh, come on. Man.
Is that from the way that they're wrapped, or is that?
So there is some. So that is skull binding is the term. Is like get their babies and do skull binding. That is a thing that does happen, but that doesn't explain all the elongated skulls we've seen, because even with skull binding, you're not changing the volume of the brain, right? It's just squished into a different shape.
Yeah.
But we've found some examples of elongated skulls that have bigger brain pans, like bigger volumes of brain. So it's not a result of skull binding, of cranial binding.
Whoa.
So there does seem to be some other version of humans that could have been involved. I actually do think that. It doesn't necessarily, if you go with the whole ancient civilization thing, it doesn't have to be Homo sapien. Like, I I think we've found the Denisovans, like this is an emerging area of complexity for us now. There's all these other species of hominids that are coming out. You've the Denisovans, the Denisovans.
No.
So there's a whole new species that they've found, basically from a pinky bone, by the way. Not a lot more evidence for it than that, but there's a whole other subspecies of essentially human cousins or hominids, from the Denisova cave, that we don't know much about. And we know that, for example, the Neanderthals had bigger brains than us.
Yeah.
We don't know much about them. Like they're built like brick shithouses compared to us. They could have lived for much longer than us. They could have communicated in other methods. Like, I think if you go back far enough in time, it may not have just been us building stuff. Some of these other species could have been responsible too.
Wait, Neanderthals had bigger brains, were stronger, just better versions of us. How'd they die out? I thought we killed them.
Yeah, I think, well, that's the
Like,
mainstream
come on,
story.
man.
I think fire was one of the things we had that was really effective. I read this in Sapiens, and obviously I forgot it.
Yeah.
And then also communication,
Yeah.
and the tribe and the herd that we have through communication, and apparently gossip is something that really binds humans together. Our language.
Oh,
is
so we could
something
organize a little
I
bit.
think I'm done. I'm
Neanderthals.
gonna read
Neanderthals
somebody
were a
in
little
like a
bit
minute or
more
two, I think.
Ape-like.
Yeah, they
Thank you for
didn't
being
have
here.
the vocal.
I really appreciate it.
box
Thanks for the
that
raid, Robbie
the
Rat Boys and
construction did. We
Kratos.
don't think that they could
Legend.
talk. But we don't really
Legends.
know, and who knows if there was other methods of communication with other versions of these species. We don't know. But
Okay,
yeah,
whatever.
that's what they say. We hunted them out with group tactics, but I mean, you wouldn't take one of these dudes on one-on-one. I mean, it's bone densities like broom handles or broomsticks to axe handles. Like they were on a scale in the same way like a chimpanzee. The powder weight is so much superior to us. That's what the Neanderthals were like compared to us as well. Like their muscle attachment points and their bone density and their geometry was far superior to ours. They'd rip your head right off if they wanted to.
So you think that the pyramids could have been built by what do you call them, a hominid?
Hominid, potentially some other hominid species. I think
A human ancestor.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about giant humans. I was like, could it just be Neanderthals? But I guess
Could
they're
be.
not that much taller.
Well, there's a few things. So the rumors of giants is a thing. Like you have a lot of that in parts of the UK. You get a lot of that in Native American legends and the mound builders and all of that.
And
That's
even
the
biblical history, right?
biblical history with giants. Yeah, Patagonia. There is
What makes someone a giant? That's the thing. Like, some of us could get lost in translation.
potentially.
I mean, I'm
It's a relative term. It's inherently relative.
Yeah.
Like someone being a giant just means like they're bigger than most people I see.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're part of a tribe, everybody's around like 4.5 feet, and then you go to like the Sudan, you see somebody 6'6", you're like, these motherfuckers are giants.
Yeah.
Right? In the same way that like a
Fucking hell.
cyclops might have been some guy who got his eye fucking poked out, and all of a sudden there's these one-eyed people, yada, yada, yada. So yeah,
It is. They do describe it. If you go, it's not just individuals either. It is actually like a group of people. Like they're described as a type of people in a lot of these myths and legends and stories and depictions. It is a bit. It's not. Yeah, I understand. You have individuals that are potentially giants, but
no,
they
I'm
do
saying,
describe
like,
it
there are
as like a
certain
group of people.
there are certain
Yeah, yeah.
cultures that are just taller than others, and certain
sure.
that are shorter to this day.
Yeah,
so
that's
would
right.
we describe them as giants now?
Dunno.
Maybe not, but
Yeah.
And obviously things are going to get exaggerated through time.
Sorry, this is not your giant theory, but I was going over your stuff. But you have an interesting theory on aliens.
Ah, okay. We want to go. Well, I mean, I don't invoke aliens for any of the ancient civilization stuff, but I'm like pretty convinced. I mean, I think it's a mathematical certainty that other life exists in the universe. Like
But you said it was humans that have left the planet, correct?
Oh, you're
did
on
I
this
say
one?
this? Is this on the Concrete Podcast?
Yeah.
It's possible. Well, there's some other people. It's an interesting theory. I wouldn't say it's my theory, but yeah, it is. It is possible.
No,
You
it's
analyze
yours.
some of the historical accounts
Yeah.
that there may have been an exodus, and some of this may have even been depicted in some of the Egyptian temples and in stories. That it could be taken in that light. That yes, there may have been a branch of humanity in the past that left.
So if
Would
we're
that be
having,
the first? Oh yeah. Okay. Go.
if we're having fun,
Yeah.
pre-Younger Dryas,
Yeah, yeah.
some humans could have escaped Earth.
Yep.
And that's why alien civilization or technology, alien technology, is so much more advanced. It's just these humans from pre-Younger Dryas that built the pyramids
Could be.
who got the fuck out, and now we started over, so
We're
they
just
have
the
this massive
dummies.
head start.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just the guys who left and had to start over, and they're out. They have all their technology.
Think about it like this.
Knowledge.
They saw the fireball coming.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, not part of this. We're going. We're going to the F out of here. Maybe we'll come back when the weather's nice again.
That's the crazy part. Is only some of them made it off, too.
Yeah.
The rest of them just had to wear that shit.
Yeah.
They did, yes.
Fuck.
Yeah, you want to win the lottery in that case. It's like, yeah, all right. What's your social security number?
Do you think that's the obsession with space travel now? You think that Elon and some of these guys, they know that it's only a matter of time before a comet comes and they just want to be ready to be out there?
Elon is interesting in that he does seem to have this awareness of these ice ages and cataclysms and stuff. And I'm sure, look, we're getting better at it. Like, we are. We did the DART mission recently. You see that? Where we fired off a probe and actually tried to deflect like a meteor. So we just moved it like a 15th of a degree or whatever, and enough to think, all right, theoretically, we could probably do something about this. So we're starting to put some resources towards it. People do understand it. Back when there was Space Force and Colonel Matt Lohmeyer was running it, he was going to get Randall Carlson in to talk to those guys about catastrophism. So I'm sure people are looking at it, and I guess that's the long-term goal for some of the space guys. I don't know.
I mean, shit, that makes sense. If it happens this regularly and it's this catastrophic, why would we not, put some resources toward it?
Yeah. I mean, the whole alien thing, though, it's like, I don't think we need it to justify the stuff in the past. What Bob Lazar said on Rogan was interesting. One of the things he said was, well, one of the aircraft came from an archaeological dig. So it's possible this stuff's been going on for a long time. I don't see why not. It's an awful lot of space and time out there, for that overlap to happen. We kind of think of things in our long term is the span of a human life. It's not very. And
I think I'm done. One more attempt. I'm gonna do one more force stuck attempt. I think.
You've got
it's a blink.
Billions of years and almost infinite distances, and to have two civilizations kind of peak and cross over and match each other it would be a coincidence, but mathematically it's almost certain that life exists, right? The Kepler missions, when they did that and they started to look at like where they found planets in the Goldilocks zone around stars. They started to analyze the shadows in front of stars, and they could determine like the distance of some of these planets, and they thought they wouldn't find them very much, but then the numbers went up exponentially. It's like planets are in Goldilocks zones everywhere. So,
and if you could explain the Goldilocks zone.
Well, it's the distance where a planet's orbiting like a habitable solar system with a sun that works for us, and you're in basically a zone where liquid water can exist.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're either too hot and it boils off, or you're too cold and it's just
Freezes.
rock hard. And so there's a little Goldilocks zone like where Earth is, where you have liquid water, and everything we know about life is, requires that as a basis for it, and then whatever else takes place to start life and evolution. And I mean, if they find one skerrick of bacteria or something on Mars, or even something else in this Titan, for example, in this solar system, I mean, that's case closed. If you find life in more than one astral, one body in one solar system, it's everywhere.
Forget it.
It's got to be everywhere. So,
are you interested in Antarctica at all, in terms of like geological research and pyramids and things like that? I know that there's a big looming conspiracy regarding Antarctica, where people can't go and visit. It's super restricted and cut off, and it's blocked on Google Maps in a lot of places. So I'm curious if you have thoughts on that.
You can go to, and if you want to go skiing in Antarctica or go climb mountains, you can. There's like a summer camp. You can fly down there and do that stuff. It just costs a fortune. I am interested in it, and I do think that that's actually a potential zone for investigation for a remnant of if there was anything left of, say, a builder culture. I think Antarctica is one of those places we should look. We know parts of Antarctica have had ice on them for a very long time, like 1 million years. But there's also some weird shit that comes down from like ancient maps. It's one of these evidences. It's like this fragment of advanced knowledge. We talked about longitude earlier, right? There are ancient maps that were made, like the Piri Reis map's a good example, made by a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis in the 1500s. He drew it from a collection of older source maps that he got from like the Library of Alexandria that are now all lost to us. So we don't have the source maps. We have his map, which is a collection of other maps. But part of it shows both very accurate longitude, and it also maps the coastline of Queen Maud's Land in Antarctica super accurate. And that today is under the ice. It's like a mile of ice or something. And this was confirmed by like the US Air Force geological map group in the 1960s. There's a professor named Hapgood, John Hapgood? Charles Hapgood. Worked with the US
I have no health,
Air Force and these guys
it's not fast.
the topographical
It's
department to confirm,
experience.
that's the explanation for this part of the map. It's the coastline of Antarctica and what's under the ice. And that map also shows like rivers and trees and things. So it's like There's little fragments that come down of like what the world may have looked very differently in the past.
But I mean, just
parts
the
of it.
idea that it's habitable 500 years ago seems pretty surprising to me.
Well, I don't think it was 500 years ago. So this is the thing. So Piri Reis was.
He was using maps from.
He was using ancient maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may have been redrawn from other ancient maps. It's like there's a couple other maps like the Orontius Phineas map. It's another one. It shows like
wow, the half
America
bar damage
and
insane.
Antarctica